Coming up on today's edition of Trailblazer Weekly, basketball season rolls on as the Trailblazers won a combined 3 out of 4 games in Colorado over the weekend. Women's swimming head coach Tamper McAllister will also stop by a little bit later in the show.
Plus, Maddie Loftus has been on fire over the last 5 games, connecting on 19 three-pointers to help DSU to some critical victories. We'll chat with Maddie in studio ahead on the team's trip to Colorado Mesa on Friday.
It's all coming up next. A loaded show. Trailblazer Weekly starts right now.
Live from the CEC studio at Dixie State University, it's Trailblazer Weekly with Carrick Segmiller. And Drayson Ball. This is Trailblazer Weekly.
We are live inside the CEC TV studios on the Community Education Channel, Radio Dixie 91.3 FM, and the Dixie State Athletics YouTube page with another exciting edition of Trailblazer Weekly. I'm Carrick Segmiller, and as always, joining me is my co-host, Drayson Ball. Drayson, I don't know if you caught any of the NFL playoffs over the weekend. All I can say is I'm just hoping to do my job better than the NFL officials did over the weekend. Not a great weekend for NFL officials.
Yeah, it was absolutely, it was just embarrassing. Of course, I watched the game. I watched both the NFC and AFC championship games, and you hate to see games kind of like that decided by referees. You can all obviously argue, well, plays were won and lost before that, but obviously certainly impacted by NFL referees, and you never like to see that. But we do a pretty good job here on Trailblazers Weekly, and I think we can have confidence in that.
Well, now that I know that there's some stuff I can exploit, I may just out of nowhere just knock you off your chair, and there will be no interference call because apparently, that you can do that now. You can just knock a guy over before the ball comes. But anyway, that's enough of that weekend recap. We got plenty of Dixie State stuff to recap, so let's start into the recap, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's start off on the basketball court, and let's jump right into it. The Trailblazers headed to Colorado in desperate need of a sweep. That is the men's basketball team I'm talking about, and they did just that, Carrick. Both games for the men's basketball team were very, very critical wins, like we mentioned earlier. 84-48 win against Colorado Christian University, and then they followed that up with a thrilling victory over Regis the next night. 2 very good games and 2 critical games, especially for positioning in the RMAC. Just very, very hard-fought games and 2 critical wins on a tough road trip. Absolutely.
Let's start with that Friday night win over Colorado Christian. You mentioned the score already, 84-48, and I like the word that you used, critical. Dixie State now in the 8th spot, actually, have played themselves back into that RMAC tournament. They're not comfortable there. They need to keep winning and continue to go on, these runs that we've become accustomed to late in the season of these Coach Judkins-led teams. So hope they can continue that and move even up to, I'd love to see them be able to host a game, but it's going to take a lot of work to be able to do that. But back to Friday, an 84-48 win over Colorado Christian, just trying to set the tone for the trip, trying to bounce back from the tough loss that they had against Chadron State the week before in the Burns Arena. You never like to lose at home. They wanted to make a statement. They came out 13-0 run to start the game in Lakewood on Friday night. They led the game 34-17 at halftime. They didn't look back. It was more of the same in the second half, and they spread the margin of victory even from what the halftime lead was. The fast start, didn't look back, and it led wire to wire. Just the thing that they needed. They were the rest some of their key guys down the stretch. Conway didn't play as many minutes as he normally would, a few of those guys, and that allowed them to be ready to play Regis the next night. But it was a perfect game to start the trip off with.
And absolutely, and we talked about it a few weeks ago on last week's show, I believe, about their defense and how it's been playing very well over the last few weeks. Just 48 points for Colorado Christian. And how about this stat? This is one of the most telling stats I think I've ever seen in any level of basketball. Dixie State held Colorado Christian to 14%. That's right, 14%, Carrick. 4 of 28 shooting in the first half. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, shooting under 15% for any half. That's 20 minutes of basketball. They made just one shot that wasn't a three. One shot that wasn't a three. I mean, that was obviously what propelled them to the halftime lead, 34-17. And then obviously they just propelled themselves from there, shooting 53% from the field throughout the game and 53% from three-pointer as well. Very, very good numbers and a good victory on the road on a Friday night.
100%. Matt Conway, 19 points. Julian Decree, he's a guy that you like to see not only scoring but getting involved defensively. And when he is involved defensively, it usually leads to a better offensive night as well. He had 13 points. And how about Quincy Matthews? Kind of a big bounce-back game for him. He had 10 points. Cameron Chatwin, back from injury, he had 10 points. Good night overall for Dixie State, moving into that Friday win at Regis, 77-74. Going into the weekend, Regis was the number 2 team in the RMAC, and you thought, on paper, you're looking at, possibly a win Friday, and then you just play your heart out and see what happens Saturday. Dixie State, man, eat your heart out. They're able to go in and they say, we're not just playing for the one, we're getting both, and it shows that this Dixie State team can play with anybody, and they did a lot of good things, and I don't think you can overstate how important this victory was for this team to bounce back, to get back in RMAC tournament contention, and even to be able to move up. You got to have a foundation to start on. I believe that the games that they won at home and then winning these 2 on the road, that's laying that foundation for some special things that we're going to see in the next few weeks.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I mean, and when you look at the box score, I know we were talking about this before the show. When you look at the box score, I mean, it's kind of hard to piece together how the Trailblazers won this one, just because that's how close of a game it really was. I mean, they did win the rebound battle 38-32, but they did commit more personal fouls, 31-27. They also turned the ball over 15 times compared to just 11 for Regis. But the number that stands out when you look at the box score is the free throws. They shot 40 free throws in this game, making 30 of them, 75% clip. That's the difference in the game. That was the reason why they were able to kind of secure that lead and the victory down the stretch, because, Regis shot 24 of 38, just 63% from the free throw line, and they, obviously Regis outshot them in the game. But that's really where it came down to the kind of winning aspect of this game was the free throw line, and that's really something that the men's basketball team has been struggling so far a little bit this season, and really was able to capitalize there, getting to the free throw line so much, and that was the difference of the game.
Oh, absolutely. You shoot 40 free throws in a game, and you're able to come away with 30 of them. You still don't like, and as a coaching staff, you still don't like leaving 10 points at the free throw line, but you make 30 out of 40. You're okay with that in a 3-point win. I liked the resiliency they showed. They went down 14 points in the first half. And for just a moment, you're thinking, okay, here we go. They've battled, they've stayed within striking distance, and now it's late in the first half. They trail 42-28. What are they going to do? They went on a run before halftime and then cut it back to low single digits early in the second half, and then it was just back and forth. And then they made the key run toward the end, and they were able to win that game. So not only did they win on the road at a tough place to win, but they did it in style, coming back, showing resiliency. Huge win for Dixie State. Now in 8th place in the RMAC tournament. Big games coming up with that kind of rivalry matchup with Colorado Mesa in Grand Junction on Friday. And then they'll have Gunnison to take on Western Colorado on Saturday. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the show. But huge wins for the men's basketball team.
Excellent game from Matt Conway as well, 24 points, 7 of 10 from the field.
We got more basketball to talk about. The women's also took that trip to the Denver area to take on Colorado Christian and Regis. They were looking to build on the sweep that they had over MSU Denver and Chadron State the weekend before. They ran into kind of a, I don't know what you call it, buzzsaw. Friday night, 50% three-point shooting for Colorado Christian. It's hard to beat any team that is going to shoot like that against you. 15 three-pointers, 15 of 30 from beyond the arc. Dixie State still did a few good things, but the three-point barrage started early. It happened often, and it was hard to bounce back for Dixie State, and their three-point shooting just wasn't quite on like it is some nights, and so they couldn't match those threes, got behind by double digits, and ultimately fell 78-71 61. It was a tough loss. And then obviously, but they were able to bounce back the next night. But anytime you play a team that shoots that well, good luck.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the three-pointers because obviously that's the biggest difference of the game. 15 made three-pointers for Colorado Christian versus just 6 for the Trailblazers. They were just 27% from 3, 6 of 22 throughout the game. And so that's a 9 made shots, 27-point differential just behind the three-point arc. I mean, when you put it like that, it's not out of the realm of possibility that you could have lost this game by 20 or 30 easily. Trailblazers losing it only by 17. But yeah, I mean, there are some positives that you can take out of this game. The Trailblazers did turn the ball over just 12 times. That's a pretty good number for most games. Obviously, you'd like to keep it around the 9 or 10 mark, but 12 is pretty good. And obviously, like you mentioned, when you run into a team that's just lighting it up from 3, that's one of the really tough things. The Trailblazers just went ice cold in the fourth quarter, making just 7 points. They were 2 of 13 from the field. Didn't make a three-pointer in the fourth quarter. And so when you have a team shooting as well as Colorado Christian was from behind the arc, and then you just go ice cold in the fourth quarter, it's almost just like a series of unfortunate events that led to a 17-point loss on Friday night for the women's basketball team.
Next night, they were able to bounce back at Regis. We talk about how you got to at least split on the road and win your games at home to have a good chance to make it to the conference tournament and be in a position to maybe play your way through that and get into the NCAA tournament. And so it was critical that Dixie State not be swept on this trip. They bounced back. These were both teams, Colorado Christian and Regis, that were all just a spot or two ahead of Dixie State in the standings, that were just in that RMAC tournament spot. Regis, I think, was in the 6th spot going into last week. So Dixie State absolutely needed a victory. They were able to do just that. You mentioned them going ice cold in the fourth quarter at Colorado Christian. The next night, how about red hot? They record their highest shooting percentage since 2012 and the 5th highest percentage overall in the D2 era, 56% from the field for Dixie State in the win, including, how about the second quarter? This is where it all just kind of blew open. 73% from the field for the Trailblazers in the second quarter and 71% from three-point range. That's where I think Dixie State kind of built their confidence and said, we're going to win this game. Doesn't matter.
I mean, that's a huge swing. I mean, they were outscored by 3 in the first quarter. So you go from trailing 3 and after the first quarter, and then you outscore them by 8 in the second quarter. So you go from trailing 3 to leading by 5 in just 10 minutes. I mean, that's a huge momentum swing going into halftime at a place that's very tough to play in. I mean, obviously you're in Denver, Colorado. You're at elevation, over 5,000 feet, and so it's one of those games that if you get down early, it might be tough for you to catch up playing at elevation and obviously fatigue after a back-to-back. So it's very critical for them to have that good second quarter to propel them to ultimately win this game 74-70. And an excellent win. Don't discredit this win. This is a very, very good basketball team and a great win on the road.
Oh, absolutely. And you mentioned all those good numbers. Maddie Loftus, career high 23 points. We're going to chat with Maddie. She had a good chance at RMAC Offensive Player of the Week, honestly, but MSU Denver had a girl on their team set the RMAC record for most threes made in a game, and I think tied the NCAA record. So, what are you going to do? But a great performance by Maddie Loftus, and she, over the last 5 games, she's been averaging almost 15 points per game, and has been that next scorer that Dixie State has needed, especially with Mariah Martin out. She has come on strong and is starting to shoot the ball like she did at USU Eastern in the junior college ranks, and she will be huge. And I'm just going to say it should be critical for this team going down the stretch. We'll be able to talk to her about that a little bit later in the show. We got to run to break, but first there was another Dixie State event. We get into this winter time where we're kind of used to just basketball happening. Women's swimming was in action over the weekend in their lone home dual meet of the year. Western Colorado was in town for that. Dixie State beating the Mountaineers by a count of 171-91. By the way, we'll have women's swimming head coach Tamara McAllister on the show a little bit later. We will ask her, if you've ever been wondering how exactly do they score, how are points scored in women's swimming, we'll ask her that and get a little bit of an explanation on that. Dixie State, though, was able to bookend the meet by sweeping both relay races, starting with a victory in the 200-yard medley relay as a team of Rebecca Anderson, Audrey Hyde, Hannah Hansen, and Miriam Gonzalez touched the wall first with a time of 1:49.44. Then in the final race of the day, Gonzalez, Kinsey Chesler, Hyde, and Kelsey Wright clocked an event-winning time of 3:40.47. Later In the meet, Hansen led the Trailblazers with 3 individual race wins, including victories in the 100 breast, the 200 breast, and the 200 individual medley. Gretchen Heyer also got on the act with victories in the 100 fly and the 200 fly, while Katie Pack won the 1650 free with a time of 18:12:45, while Wright won the 500 free with a time of 5:23:34 to go with the runner-up finishes in the 100 free and the 200 free. A lot of information there, I know, but a great weekend for Dixie State to get the win in the dual meet over Western Colorado, put on a good showing for the fans that were there to see. And now, in a couple of weeks, they've got the conference meet coming up. Great showing by the women's swimming team. Also wanted to highlight, you speaking of, performing well on the field or in the pool or whatever it may be. It was announced on Tuesday that Dixie State collected the College Swimming and Diving Coaches Association of America Scholar All-America team honors for its efforts in the classroom in the fall semester. As a team, Dixie State 3.48 team GPA, which if you look at all the schools in the RMAC and look at all the full members, that was actually the highest team GPA in the conference for all the full members. The only team higher was Nebraska Kearney, who is an affiliate member in swimming and diving. They had a 3.59. But kudos to Dixie State. Excellent performance in the pool. And then anytime you can post a team GPA like that, you're doing good things.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, there's obviously been a whole lot of great storylines coming out of the women's swimming team. They've got this beautiful facility that we'll have to talk to the swimming coach about over here at the Human Performance Center. Every time I read their recaps, it's always them setting new records and things like that. Obviously, getting a win over Western Colorado is obviously a great stepping point for a team that obviously is propelling to go upwards.
Should note, right quickly before we run to break, we're a few minutes past already, but to earn that honor, you have to post a team GPA of 3.0 or higher and maintain a roster of 12 or more student athletes. So they blew that, no pun intended, out of the water. 3.48 GPA. Congratulations to women's swimming head coach Tamara McAllister and her student athletes for that wonderful accomplishment. We'll talk to her about that coming up next, actually. Coach McAllister is here, and she will join us on set after this break. That's what's coming up next. Don't go anywhere. We've got a lot of good stuff left on this week's edition of Trailblazer Weekly.
Do you think people like John McCain and other people would just sit there quietly on the sides, and that many Republican activists would refrain from registering their disapproval in the peanut gallery?
Some might argue that Republican activist is an oxymoron.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of activism.
Right.
But do you see what I'm saying? If you just flip it right over on its head.
I would like to flip it on its head, and in fact, I'm already doing that because my own position is free speech is free speech. Okay, and I'm kind of advocating for something that I'm really not supporting in this respect. As far as protesting or not protesting and being able to recognize your audience, what we need on either side, I don't care where you're coming from, is the ability to recognize the audience.
Where do you find the titans of classical music in St. George? Classical music on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM. Where do you find the legends of jazz? Evenings on Radio St. George, 100.3 FM.
Trailblazer Weekly is presented by the Dixie State Campus Store, the official store for Trailblazer and Dixie State clothing, as well as cheap textbooks, discounted computers, and supplies for students. They're located in the second floor of the Gardner Center and are open from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. during the week. Closed on Saturdays and Sundays? You can stop by any time because they'll be loaded with great Trailblazer swag all the time.
Women's swimming team is fresh off a dual victory over Western Colorado and is prepping for the RMAC Championships coming up in less than a month. Here to help us break it all down is head coach Tamara McAllister. Coach, thanks for joining us today. We haven't had you on the show yet. We like to bring the coaches in and show off kind of our new set that we have here. I feel like it's kind of a fun place to be, and we're excited to have you on the show today, talk some women's swimming. and maybe get to know some of your players better, get to know this team, and maybe even understand the rules and the scoring a little bit better as well. I'm sure you heard us talking about that in the last segment as well. So thanks for being here. We'll just dive right into it. Let's talk about last week first. Western Colorado comes into town. If I'm looking at the schedule right, that's your only quote-unquote home meet of the year, so you don't have to travel just over to Washington City Community Center, have that dual meet, and you come away with a good victory in that one. How did you feel as a coach about the team's performance? And there was a lot of individual wins. As a coach, when you step back and look at it, just give us a recap of that event and what you liked that you saw there.
Yeah, I was pretty excited about the meet. We went to a meet in November where Western was there as well, and they actually beat us by over 100 points at that meet. We did have quite a few swimmers at that meet that were sick, and so that may have helped a little bit, but I thought that it would be a very close meet, and we brought all of our big guns to every event, hoping to compete at the highest level, and I thought our girls did a good job stepping up and taking that last step to prepare for our conference championships. So.
Do they get excited about, and college athletes specifically, the team, they like to travel sometimes, they like to be together, but were they excited to not have to travel for this one and to say, hey, we get to go swim where we swim at, every day for practice? And I don't know, maybe that's not a big of a factor in swimming. Water is water maybe, but were they excited to just swim in their home pool, so to speak?
Of course they were. And I think this season just kind of set up weird where we only had one home dual meet. We're looking forward to next season when our new pool is being opened, and we'll be able to schedule a lot more competitions at home. It just kind of set up weird, but they really look forward to a lot of their families live close, so their families came down to cheer them on, and I think they had a good time.
Coach, let's rewind a little bit, talk a little bit about just kind of the season in general. Obviously, great win against Western Colorado, but I mean, obviously you've had a handful of other meets, a second place finish, a Pepperdine, fourth place finish, Colorado Mesa, among others. Talk about what you've seen so far throughout the season, how you've performed well, and things that maybe you can improve on.
Yeah, so our team this is our third season of the women's swim team at Dixie State, so we're pretty new, and we're also very young. We had 12 incoming freshmen this year, and college swimming is a different animal than club swimming. In club swimming, it's a very individual sport, and it still has that factor in college swimming, but it's a new animal for these freshmen coming in. So I think they've done a pretty good job acclimating towards it, and I wish we would have had more competitions at home especially, but it didn't work out that way, and they've done a good job adapting anyway. They did a really good job at the beginning of the season. We had speed early on, and they've been able to make the adjustments throughout the season on their individual races in order to compete how we wanted them to. So.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you've definitely improved over the first 3 years, and it's such a young program. It's obviously been one of those things that we've been able to see kind of develop into something that's going to be hopefully a very good, competitive program going forward. I want to ask you this. Let's talk a little bit about the schedule. To the layman, the schedule might look, well, geez, you have meets in October, November, October, and then nothing until January. Why is it that the season is kind of broken up into like two separate parts? What is that about the schedule? Why is it like that?
So swimming's a little bit different than most competition sports, I would say. We have like a mandatory break at the end of December, and it's hard to just pick up and start swimming right after that. And then we kind of give them a little bit of a break during finals. It's so hard to travel, and it works out that way where we can kind of have invitational swim meets early on. Like I said, next year I hope that we can have more competitions, and we will probably add a few more, maybe one early December and maybe one mid-December. But late December, it's pretty common for most teams not to compete. So.
Chatting with women's swimming head coach Tamber McAllister here on Trailblazer Weekly. Coach, let's rewind a little bit and go back to, you're at BYU, the Dixie job comes open. I know you can read your bio, and the quote from you says that you kind of had your eye down here, maybe thought something might be happening. This job was on your radar. What was it about Dixie State that made you want to come down here and take this job and coach here in St. George and at Dixie specifically?
I always make the joke that I like to follow Benjamin Ray wherever he goes. So he actually coached me my senior year at BYU, and then he ended up leaving, and I took his job at BYU. Got some good experience there. I just was at a spot in my career where I wanted something a little more challenging. I was kind of, looking for something new, and being a head coach is a big jump, from assistant, and so I didn't know that I would actually do it, but when I met with Dr. Booth, he really won me over with his perspective, and I foresee a lot of growth in the university, and obviously the new pool is amazing, so that says a lot about the belief that the university has in our program, and that was a big factor as well.
For one, if you were still up at BYU right now, you would have been shoveling some driveways over the last few weeks. So that's nice. I mean, you can send the kids out there to do that too, maybe. But speaking of that, I mean, you swam at BYU collegiately. You had 2 different stints at BYU. 4 or 5 year stints on each side of those, and really helped prep you to being a head coach. Like you said, maybe you don't ever really feel like anything really preps you for everything in being a head coach because it's just so demanding. But what was it, or what did you learn at BYU to maybe help prep you for being a head coach, for making that jump from assistant to head coach?
Well, I had a lot of good mentors at BYU, and some of my best friends that are still there coaching, and they kind of instilled that belief in myself that I could do it and that I would be a good coach. So I think it started there, and it just seemed like a fun adventure to go on. I'm all about adventure and trying new things, challenging myself. So.
And you gotta love the Red Rocks here in St.
Right, I do love it. I do love it.
Well, let's ask you this. We talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the interview. Let's dive into it now. I want to talk a little bit about how swimming is scored. I mean, obviously, you look at the scoreboard. You see Dixie State 171 to 81. How do you get points? How is it scored? Kind of just give us an elementary version of how you score in swimming.
So in the individual races, the top 5 athletes score unless, let's say, Dixie gets first, second, third, and fourth. We can only score a maximum of 3 athletes per event. The first place person gets 9 points, second place gets 4, 3, 2, and 1. So those are the individual races. Relays are a lot more points. You get 11 points for winning a relay, and then 4 points for second place in a relay, and then 2 points for third place in a relay. So you can only score 3 relays total, 2 per team. So.
Okay, that's something I don't think I've ever even thought of or even would have come up with in my own mind.
That's why we asked the question, right?
So,
the more you know.
The more you know. And so obviously, you got the RMAC championships coming up in just about 3 weeks' time. What kind of are you expecting? I mean, obviously you're kind of brand new to the RMAC, and it's a little bit different and maybe something unfamiliar to you. But what is the kind of you're expecting going into that matchup in about 3 weeks' time?
I've challenged our girls just to go out there and be competitive. Like you said, we don't really know what to expect. We can look at times on a sheet, but I don't know whether those are good times for those teams or not so good times. So we just, we're going to compete and do our best. My goal is hopefully to be top 3 RMAC. That's kind of what we're shooting for. It might be a little, I don't know what to call it, but ambitious, I guess. But I think our girls could definitely do it if they pull together and go for it. So
got to set the bar high, right?
Yeah.
Certainly looking forward to it. Let me ask you this one real quick. I mean, you can elaborate or not elaborate on this one however much you want, but and this might sound like a really stupid question, but it might not. When you go to a place like, say you go to Gunnison, Colorado, at Colorado Mesa, a place with higher elevation, does that affect your performance in any sort of way? I mean, obviously, with higher elevation, it's harder to run and things like that because you can't get enough oxygen. Is it like that for swimming, or is that just a silly question?
Absolutely. No. In fact, I would believe that it affects swimming probably one of the higher levels because if you think about when you go out to swim, most people have a hardest time breathing more than anything. And so, but the nice thing about competing at like Colorado Mesa, they actually have an altitude adjustment for times. So for a 200 freestyle, you get an extra 1.2 seconds that you get to subtract off of your time. So I feel like that's a very generous altitude adjustment. So it'll be interesting to see when we compete at the RMAC. It's at sea level to see how our times compare to those adjusted times, because they are very generous. So.
I was going to ask, at Louisville, Texas, is that one of the affiliate members hosting the RMAC?
No,
or what's the
it's a fast facility.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It has nothing to do with the RMAC, I don't think.
Okay.
So.
That's right. The Pac-West used to host the tennis championships in Surprise, Arizona.
Yeah.
So just wherever you find
it's just a very good facility
for everybody. And wanted to ask you about, we mentioned this in the last segment as well, and then we'll begin wrapping up. We're chatting with women's swimming head coach Tamara McAllister. I got to remember to do that for our radio listeners so that they know who we're, I always forget. We mentioned this during this last segment, and you were in the control room and heard us say this, but just talk about how proud you are of your team and of your girls to come out and to not only perform well in the pool and to swim well, but to get the CSCAA. That can be a tongue twister and a mouthful, but the Academic All-America Award, that's the important part. I mean, pretty much a 3.5 team GPA. That's awesome for his team. As many student athletes as you have on the roster, I'm sure you just couldn't be more proud of your student athletes right now.
Absolutely. Our freshmen did a really good job helping us raise our GPA as a team, and they set a goal right out of the gate. I think 2 weeks into the season, they sat down and set some team goals. They actually, I think they said they wanted to be a 3-2 or a 3-3, and they were a 3-4. So I was pretty happy with that.
Here comes my bad pun again. They blew it out of the water.
Right, they did.
That's just, you look at that and that's just extraordinary to me. It's just, you have a tendency to forget that, the student part of student athlete, and it's just great to see. I mean, that helps the university as a whole and people's perception of the athletic department to be able to say, hey, that helps get the overall student GPA up over that 3.0 that they want to see it at, 3.1, 3.2. And so congratulations to you and to your team for doing that. This is women's swimming head coach Tamara McAllister. Running out of time here on the segment, but Coach, every time we have either a coach or a student athlete on, we got to have some fun rapid fire questions at the end. Don't worry, they're not hard questions. Right. They're easy, just to help us get to know you a little bit better. Drayson, what have you got for us today in the rapid fire department for women's swimming head coach Tamara McAllister?
Yeah, a little bit different from swimming. Maybe just because I'm a little bit more unfamiliar with it than I am other sports. But let's start with this one. We always ask this one: is there a facility, maybe a pool or something like that, a facility that you've been to, or you've competed in, maybe that is just the best facility? I mean, is there anything like that?
There's a lot of good ones out there nowadays. The one that's close to my heart is Indianapolis, Indiana, IUPUI. And I competed at the Olympic trials in that pool, and that's actually where our NCAA championships are this year. So we're looking forward to going back.
Hopefully you make it there.
Yes, we hope so.
Is there a favorite memory that you have, either from coaching or from when you competed collegiately, a time or a personal record, something that maybe award you won or a first place finish you had? Is there a specific memory that you can think of?
I think some of the best things are the team things that you do, right? In college, my head coach at the time, Stan Crump, he's still coaching up in American Fork, Utah. He challenged us in our women's 200 breaststroke to get first, second, third, and fourth at the Mountain West Conference Championships that we were swimming at back then, and we ended up doing it, and so in return he actually had to jump off of the 10-meter platform. It was pretty awesome. I've got it on film. Nice. And we watch it as often as we can to remember the time, so it was a good time.
Now, if I read your bio correctly, you won that event 4 times?
Yeah.
At the Mountain West?
Correct.
So that's awesome. That had to be a great memory.
Yeah.
And including, as you mentioned, competing in the time trials as well at the Olympics. That must have been a fun event. Do you have a favorite swimmer? Was there maybe an Olympic athlete that you looked at growing up that you were like, I want to be like that?
I mean, all the ones that you can probably think of. Janet Evans was my childhood idol, and now I think Katie Ledecky's pretty dang amazing. So
it's been fun to watch her. I lose count. When are the next Summer Olympics?
Oh, in a year and a half.
A year and a half.
Yeah, something like that.
After a couple of years, I lose count. So I should probably know when those are. But thanks for stopping by. We're out of time here, but we appreciate you coming by and helping us get to know you a little bit better. And we wish you and your team the best of luck going forward in the RMAC championships. How does that all work? got to hit a certain level in the RMAC and the conference to qualify for nationals as probably as a team and then even as individuals real quickly?
So you can't qualify as a team. You have to qualify individually, and then if you have enough individuals, then you can compete. So it's a time standard that you have to hit. So.
I know we had one last year, hoping to have.
So we have 4 provisional standards already. That doesn't guarantee it. You have to have an automatic standard to guarantee it, but we're pretty dang close. We're knocking on the door, so we hope that conference championships kind of, seals the deal for us.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for stopping by. She is women's swimming head coach Tamber McAllister. The women's swimming team in just a couple of weeks heading down to Texas to compete in the RMAC championships. We got to take a break. When we come back, we'll take a look ahead at our weekend preview on the other side of this break on Trailblazer Weekly. Stick with us.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
For over a century, Dixie State University has been shaping the trailblazers of tomorrow by providing a culture of active learning, active life. With a paradigm of real-world experience mixed with cutting-edge technologies and rich traditions, we provide one of the most affordable educations in the West, set against the most stunning backdrop on the planet.
See on page 4 that the projections need to be earthquake next Thursday.
Seriously? Thursday? Can't do that.
This is really inconvenient.
I have yoga that day. I have no time for this. So.
I can't do Thursday, but I can do Friday.
Disasters don't plan ahead. You can. Talk to your loved ones about how you're going to be ready in an emergency. Don't wait. Communicate.
Fast-paced family life in need of a slowdown?
Hello, I'm Dr. Spruce. Did you know all those green shapes on maps are parks and forests? It's true. Visit discovertheforest.org and plan to visit a park or forest near you, instead of just wondering what it would have been like.
While the word forest might make you think of distant lands from far, far away, please note parks and forests are closer than you think, which means things like beautiful scenery, fresh air, and family time are also closer than you think.
Hey guys, how are you today? Good. I'm here to talk about how with technology you can make amazing worlds. Come with me. My team and I bring the Halo world to life.
Is that you?
That is me. I wasn't a math genius, and I knew nothing about coding. But you guys do. You guys have the power to change things.
I want your job.
I want you to have my job.
Trailblazer Weekly is the official show of Dixie State Athletics. You can keep up with all the Trailblazer athletic action with pictures, stats, and game recaps at dixiestateathletics.com. While you're at it, don't forget you can follow our show on Twitter as well with @DSUBlazerWeekly.
Welcome back inside the CEC TV studios. Maddie Loftus will join us after our next break. So for the second week in a row, we'll mix it up with an early weekend preview, Carrick. Men's and women's basketball both again on the road this week for the second week in a row. They'll start off by traveling to Grand Junction, Colorado, and take on Colorado Mesa, then to Gunnison, Colorado, and take on Western Colorado. 2 critical matchups, and again, a double, kind of a back-to-back on a second week in a row on the road before you come back for a massive homestand in February. But 2 good teams on the road and a good weekend coming up for men's and women's basketball.
Oh, it's huge, and when you're trying to climb back up the standings, you maybe wish that first weekend being back at home was this weekend, but and you got to play the teams in your division twice anyway, so it doesn't matter when it comes. You've got guys like Cameron Chatwin back, you're getting a few guys back, so maybe not a better time to go over to Grand Junction. This could be one of those trips that you look at on paper. Colorado Mesa is 7-4 in conference play. Western Colorado is 0-11. So, Western Colorado will have Westminster Friday night, and we'll see what happens there. But you're maybe glad that you played Colorado Mesa Friday night instead of, running into maybe a trap game Friday night against Western Colorado, and then vice versa. If you go into Grand Junction and you steal a win in Grand Junction, a very tough place to play, you can't have a letdown the next night at Western Colorado either. So this will be a huge trip. Colorado Mesa was up there in the top 3 for a while. They've lost a couple, including to Fort Lewis last week, so now they've dropped down to 5. But like we mentioned before, more importantly, Dixie State is at number 8 right now. The top 8 go. So obviously right now you'd be going to Colorado School of Mines at 11-0 in conference play to play them in the first round. If that's where, if the conference tournament were to start today, you want to avoid that. So Dixie State has a number of games. They've got time. They played yourself back into the tournament. Now you got to take care of these opportunities.
Yeah, like you mentioned, it's going to be really a test of your mettle, so to speak. You talk about going on the road to play Colorado Mesa, a team that's played very, very good throughout the season and had a little bit of a letdown last weekend, but a team that you can go beat on the road, a team that's very beatable on the road. If you play very well, and then obviously like you said, the next night going up against a struggling Western Colorado team, just 0-11 in conference play this season, a very, very good chance for you to keep climbing in the standings. If you look at it, like you mentioned, they're in 8th place right now, just 2 games behind Colorado Mesa for the 5th seed in the conference tournament. 2 crucial wins on the road could flip that script quickly if you're the men's basketball team. We're
going to talk about the women's team here in just a minute as well. But by the way, last night I was doing some game prep for the home games we have coming up, and I like to go back and just listen to games that I've called and kind of do my homework, pick out things that I got a little crazy there, probably And I was watching a game from last year when Fresno Pacific was in town, and Trevor Hill nearly had a triple-double, was 1 assist away from a triple-double, and I'm on the broadcast urging Kyler Nielsen to take a 3-point shot with 5 seconds left to see if Trevor could, because he made the pass, see if Trevor get the triple-double. But anyway, it just got me thinking, and we don't have time today, but I think in a future show we've got to have a discussion. We can do this with the women's team too as well. But greatest Dixie State men's basketball team of all time, and of course you might have to separate that into junior college and then into NCAA Division II as well, because you had 2 national championships in junior college. But if we're just looking at the 4-year era, it would be hard not to say, just on paper and by virtue of having Trevor Hill, last year's team. But assistant coach Jeremiah Barnes might have a little something to say about that, because his team that he played on in 2010, 2011 was the only Trailblazer team to advance out of the first round of the NCAA tournament. So I think he'd have a little something to say about that. So let's put a pin in that conversation, get the wheels turning a little bit. I think we need to sit down. We may take part of the segment and have some fun with that. Maybe we can even ask Coach Judkins and maybe some of his assistants what they think, because they were both part of teams as well. So,
you know me, I love discussing greatest of all time when it comes to anything. Moving on to the women, Carrick, they also have to take that tough trip over east to Colorado and play Colorado Mesa and Western Colorado. A tough stretch for the women's basketball team, as Colorado Mesa and Western Colorado are both 2 tremendously good teams. Mesa, the leading team in the conference, 11-0, a perfect unbeaten record in the conference, and then Western is sitting in 3rd place right now at 8-3 in the conference. 2 very, very formidable opponents for the women's basketball team in a tough trip to Grand Junction in Gunnison, Colorado.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that any team has a tougher slate ahead of them this weekend, but I'm going to say the women's basketball, you're playing 2 top 3 teams on the road. Like you said, Colorado Mesa undefeated in conference play, and Western Colorado. And I don't know enough about the RMAC from last year to know, but I think this Western Colorado team might be a little bit of a surprise for everybody that they're playing this well, and they're a very, very good team. So you're going to be playing at altitude in both of those games, especially in Gunnison. It's painted on the wall everywhere you go. Highest gym in the country. That's how it was in the football field too there. So you got to be good conditioned and ready to go to play those games. But Dixie State will have an opportunity to do some damage. You go in and you welcome the challenge, and you say, hey, we're a game out of the RMAC tournament right now. We're in 10th. We're looking to move up. we got to win these games, and I have every reason to believe that they can go in, and we've seen them play with. They can play with anybody. So we'll talk with them. Talk with Maddie Loftus here coming up in just a minute. She'll be a key part of that. We do need to run to that break, but I also want to let you know coming up this weekend, Dixie State will induct its 10th Hall of Fame class Saturday morning. If you're looking for something to do, over at the Gardner Center Ballroom beginning at 11 a.m. The admission is free and open to the public. Dixie State will be inducting 5-sport standout Lynn Christensen, women's soccer and basketball player Betsy Fowler, longtime coach and faculty member Gordon Jolly, and the 2004 NJCAA National Championship baseball team. That is your class of 2019 Dixie State Athletics Hall of Fame. Again, that is Saturday, January 26th at 11 a.m. at the Dixie State Gardner Center Ballroom. Come out and check that out. Baseball will also be having their annual alumni game on Saturday, and their dinner and fundraisers and golf tournament that they have. That's coming up this weekend as well. We got to take a break. We'll take a quick break and come right back. Dixie State women's basketball junior guard Maddie Loftus joining us right here in studio to wrap up the show. Don't go away. We'll have more right after this timeout.
Okay, we are inviting you to join us for Talking Point Live.
Coming to you, not necessarily live, but tape delayed on the Community Education Channel at 9:30, 12:30, and 4:30 daily, from what I understand. But you can also pick it up on our Facebook page at facebook.com/talkingpointlive.
And respond to us, right?
Please,
on
let
Facebook.
us know, because it's important to understand not only how our conversation is going, but maybe how is it affecting you at home as well, right? Eric Young,
Jennifer Kohler.
Talking Point Live. We'll see you.
Radio Dixie 91.3. We don't play that. Nope, not that. A big fat no there. That's what we play. And stuff like that. On St. George's only alternative, Radio Dixie 91.3. Oh, and from 9 till midnight, we play this. I need a one dance. And this. Radio Dixie 91.3 FM.
I take the road less traveled, run free, unwind, unravel, someplace outside with lots to do. Green trees, red rocks, and don't forget that blue sky. The sunshine shining, sunshine pouring on me. Think I might just stay a while. Say hooray all day because the sun is gonna shine on me. Sun, it's gonna shine on me. Sun's gonna shine on me.
The Dixie State Stretch Internet Portal and the RMAC Network is your home for all Trailblazer athletics live streaming. Don't miss a second of the action. You can watch DSU games home and away at portal.stretchinternet.com/Dixie State. That's portal.stretchinternet.com/Dixie State.
Welcome back inside Trailblazer Weekly. Dixie State women's basketball is looking to play itself into this year's RMAC tournament, and joining us today, a big part of those plans, junior guard Maddie Loftus. Maddie, thanks so much for joining us. I know you just wrapped up practice and literally just ran up here so you could be here with us, so thank you for that, and we're excited to have you here on the show. It's been a fun couple of weeks for you. You've been able to look out there, and you've been kind of ripping the nets over the last 5 games to the tune of 19 three-pointers. You probably don't think about the numbers too much, but over the last 5 games, you've hit 19 three-pointers, and I don't want to say necessarily what's been different, but there's been different looks you've been getting these last 5 games than earlier in the season, or more opportunities to shoot. What's maybe been a little different the last 5 games than the first 10 games?
I think it's a little bit of both for me. I think it's more finding our rhythm and getting more comfortable in our system and knowing what we're doing, and just evolving as a team, and our offense is evolving and it's growing, and we're seeing my teammates are doing a great job of getting me open, definitely not just me. And so it's been cool to see all of us grow together too.
Now let's talk about that Regis game. We talked about it earlier in the show, but you had yourself a game, career high 23 points, 5 3-point shots in that game, and our TV and internet audience is getting to see those 3-point shots right now. Were you just feeling a little something special going into that game? I know that's a cliche question to ask. It's like, you have Michael's secret stuff before the game, or what was it? Could you tell going in that, hey, in warm-ups, my shot's feeling pretty good, I think I'm going to have a good game tonight?
Kind of. The day before was kind of a rough game for us, so we had a good talk, and we were all feeling pretty confident going into Saturday. And all of us woke up with an edge, and well, it happened to go my way, and I did what we had to do, and it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, you had 3 steals in that game as well to combine with the 23 points. I mean, obviously, Maddie, you know, it's no question that you're kind of a 3-point specialist. I mean, that's kind of your role among other things, but that's really what you do best. You know, at what point in your basketball career did you kind of decide that that's where you wanted to put the most emphasis in your game, kind of shape it to be kind of a 3-point specialist?
That's a good question. As soon as I was little, all I remember is shooting all the time. That's all I would do. And especially growing up, playing with my brothers, I could never get past them in the hole. I'd always just shoot it. And so really as long as I can remember. And once I got to high school, I was like, hey, this could really be a thing. Like, this is what I need to work on. And it's just kind of evolved since then. And I've had great coaches that have helped me too.
Love that story. That's really cool.
That's a great story. You can't get inside, so
don't tell them I said that.
I'm going to adapt
and
step back and hit the three.
Shoot
the question is, did you start beating them in those games?
See, I say yes. They say no, but I always say
We'll have to go back to the tape. We'll have to review the tape.
Maddie, obviously, so you know, 2-year transfer from USU Eastern. You were the team's leading scorer there among all America honors as well. What's been the biggest difference between transitioning from USU Eastern, a junior college, into now Dixie State University, a Division II program? What's been kind of the things that you've seen differently or struggled with, or want to kind of talk to me a little bit about the transition going junior college to Division II?
Mostly just the way everything is handled, because I was at a pretty small JUCO, and you just kind of did what you wanted, and so it's been really cool to see the professionalism and everything you do. You really represent everything. And you're playing in bigger games, you're playing on bigger stages, you're playing better teams. So all around it was an adjustment for me, but it's been really fun to just move on and evolve in a bigger stage.
By the way, I should note that I did spend 1 year in Twin Falls, and I was the play-by-play announcer for CSI, for their basketball team. So don't hold that against me.
Man.
Don't hold that against me, please. You know, I'm down here back in the promised land
right
here in St. George now. But that was a fun conference to travel around in, though. There were some competitive games there. As you're finishing up, like I said, like Drayson said, you're the team's leading scorer at USU Eastern, hitting threes like they're going out of style. I'm sure lots of other schools were after you, other than just Dixie State. What were some of those, turning points? What helped sway you toward Dixie State? I'm sure the warm weather, the Red Rock, those are some of the obvious answers. But what was it about Dixie that made you want to come play here?
It was almost like a full circle for me, because I always grew up going to Dixie camps, playing basketball here, high school, and my coaches at my JUCO are really good friends with the coaches here. And it was almost the same style, it was the same, a lot of it was the same, so I knew it would be an easy transition. And a lot of my, Yazzie played at Bingham, I played at Bingham, and I'd heard about her all growing up. She was a legend. And so meeting her and being like, man, I could play for these people was a really big deal to me. And I felt like I was just meant to be here the minute I stepped on campus and was with the team. It just felt right.
Is the opportunity to kind of build something and build a legacy, is that something that kind of goes through your mind too, to say, hey, there's great things going on at Dixie State right now, I can go be a part of something special? Is that enticing as a recruit when you look at that?
That was a big thing, almost my number one, because I'd much rather go to a program where you can be something and do something, and I believed in what Coach Gustin is doing, and it's where I wanted to be.
You've been a part of a lot of teams, and this is, Drayson and I like to poke fun at each other about the questions we always ask, and it'll sound cliche, but you've been a part of a lot of teams, and I'm sure had fun with a lot of those teams. This team just seems special. You seem every time I'm down at practice, there's people laughing, having fun, but being serious when you need to be. What's your favorite thing about this year's team that just makes it fun to go participate and play and compete day after day?
I think it is our ability to know when to show up and when to have fun. Because when it's ready to go, we're all in. Everyone wants to be there, which is rare. Like, every single person wants to be there and be a part of it. But off the court, we have so much fun, and we're all included, and it's such a team environment, and it's never about us. It's always about each other, and it's a lot of fun.
You guys, your team, going back to that, has been, super resilient all season long, and I think it kind of goes back to what you said about how special the team can be. Going back to last weekend, obviously a tough loss against Colorado Christian. You guys kind of just ran into a team that was on fire from three, and then in the fourth quarter you guys kind of cooled off a little bit. How do you change your mindset going from a tough loss against Colorado Christian to the next night a very good Regis team? How do you kind of change your mindset and say, let's put that loss behind us, and we got to focus for another game tonight?
Yeah, We talked a lot in the locker room after the game about controlling what we could control, because we felt like we did a good job in the game. Obviously, we could have done better. We could have shared the ball more, but we knew that wasn't us. And we've been saying that all season. We haven't been playing us. We haven't been doing the things that we should be doing. And so Saturday, I think we hit a point where it was like, this is it. Like, this is the time where we're going to move forward. All of the other games are behind us, and we're going to start playing together. And I think it worked. All of our attitudes really went the way it should.
Obviously, a great win against Regis and a tough team to beat on the road. You've been on the road a lot lately. I mean, you're going to go on another road trip this weekend before coming back in February, and going to be at home most of the month in February. What do you guys kind of do as a team to stay loose on these long road trips? What do you do to stay focused? Take me through what it is like to go on a long, extended kind of road trip, so to speak.
Okay. We talk a lot about this because it's a really big deal, and so we always leave the day before and get used to being on the road. Friday we have shoot around, and then we play the game, and it's immediately the next, focusing on the next game after that game, because you don't have a lot of time to scout. Saturday game, you're all focused on the Friday game, which is kind of what you have to do in our conference. And so being on the road it can be used to our advantage also, because you don't have any other distractions. And so for us, it's almost been a good thing, and I think we've gotten a lot better as we've gone on learning how to play on the road, because we know how to handle it better, and just knowing this isn't what you're used to, but you still have to go show up every day.
Did you stop and pick up a library card in any of the cities? I mean, you're in Colorado enough that you're a permanent resident.
Yeah.
Just in case I need something to read while I'm on the road.
Yeah.
We're chatting with Dixie State women's basketball junior guard Maddie Loftus. A little time running out on the show, but before we let you go, we always have these rapid fire questions at the end, and we like to have fun with it. Just easy questions, help us get to know you a little bit. And so let's start with this. Do you have a favorite basketball player, someone that you've kind of grown up watching that you wanted to mold your game after?
Steph Curry, sadly, but yes.
That
I'm
makes
not
sense.
a Warriors fan, but I love Steph Curry.
I can see it.
Yeah.
I mean, greatest shooter of all time, and someone who's revolutionized the game of basketball. So
Did you see his Shaq and a fool moment the other night?
Yeah.
Though?
Crazy.
You should stick to shooting threes and not trying to dunk, right?
Well, he did shoot a three after that.
Well, it was
Steph Curry's a phenomenal player.
Yeah.
He's one of the best in the NBA, so that's a good choice.
Any favorite venue that you've ever watched a game at?
Ooh, this past summer I actually went to LA and got to watch a WNBA game. And that was really cool. I'd have to say that was my favorite.
Staples Center?
Staples Center, cool. Yeah.
Wow, that's always one of my bucket lists up there with the Madison Square Garden. And
yeah, that would be really cool
obviously
too.
Staples Center is one of those.
That's what LeBron told Dwayne Wade when they played that game there, right? It had to either end here or at the Garden, right?
At the Garden,
yeah,
so.
It makes sense. It was amazing.
Is there a favorite memory that you have from either your high school career, your junior college career, something here at Dixie State? Maybe a game winner, a favorite memory, you won something, an award. Is there anything sort of thing like that comes to mind?
My freshman year in Price was a really big year for us. We had not been doing very good, and we actually beat the number 4 team in the nation my freshman year, which was a huge deal for us. And that's probably my favorite memory of all time. It was fun.
What school was that at the time?
We played Slick.
Okay.
So from a little small school to big time, It was awesome.
No, Price was fun though. I've been making the trips there. The community was there, and it was fun. Chatting with women's basketball guard Maddie Loftus. Time running out on the show. I feel like we're missing one that we always ask. What am I missing?
I can't think of one. I can't think of anyone.
Maybe we've hit them all. Time winding down. Thanks so much for joining us on the show, Maddie. And one more trip to Colorado, and then that's what it was. Then you get to come back and play in the Burns Arena. Is the team looking forward to? You can't look past this tough trip, but the team looking forward to being able to get back in the Burns and letting family come down from Northern Utah and cheer you on?
Well, yes, we've talked about it, just getting through it, and then after that, finishing 2 hard road games, and then after that, that's what we're used to.
Awesome. She is Dixie State women's basketball junior guard Maddie Loftus. The women's basketball team making a tough trip to Colorado this weekend. They'll be in Grand Junction, just about 5 hours from here, of course, depending on the weather, on Friday night, and then making the drive Friday night after the game to Gunnison, Colorado, elevation 7,700, something like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. I got winded just climbing up the stairs of the football stadium there in Gunnison. If you want to watch the live stream or follow the live stats, you can find those links at DixieStateAthletics.com. Trailblazers.com. There's a calendar up at the top of the page, or you can find the women's basketball page. Go to their schedule. The links will be there as well. So follow along. Should be some good basketball this weekend. Also, don't forget about the Hall of Fame induction this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the Dixie State Gardner Center Ballroom. Time is gone. Another edition of Trailblazer Weekly is in the books. Remember, you can watch the show anytime on demand at youtube.com/Dixie State Athletics. For Drayson Ball and the entire CEC TV crew, as well as Martin Kelly back in the Radio Dixie 91.3 FM studio, I'm Carrick Stegmiller. Thanks for making us part of your day. We'll see you next week. Go Trailblazers.